Welcome to Cricket News. Today we shall discuss briefly the history of India and New Zealand, the history of Test cricket between India and New Zealand, and some incidents. India first played New Zealand in 1955-56, which remains the only five-match Test series between the two sides. So this was a very delayed start for any contest. By then, India had played England, Australia, West Indies, and Pakistan, all of them home and away, but not New Zealand ever. So during that series, Vinu Mankad and Pankaj Roy added 413 for the first wicket at Madras. This remained a world record opening stand for over 50 years. In 2007-8, Graeme Smith and Neil Mackenzie added 415 to break this. We know that Sehwag and Dravid came close to beating this against Pakistan, but it stayed for around 50 years. In 1964-65, when the two teams played the next time, so a couple of interesting records happened. First was Eden Gardens. Bruce Taylor scored 100 and took 5 wickets on Test debut. This is the only instance in almost 150 years of Test cricket history that a debutant scored 100 and took 5 wickets in the same Test match. I mean, in the debut Test match. At Delhi, Venkatraghavan took 8 for 72 and 4 for 80. So that's 12 wickets. But what was interesting is that he dismissed all 11 opposition batters. Every person out. So the 12 wickets included 11 distinct cricketers. Kumble, who dismissed 10 in the same innings years later, could not achieve this. So Venkat became the second cricketer after Jim Laker to do this. In 1967-68, as we know, India toured New Zealand. This was the first. India won the series 3-1. This was the first time India won a Test series away from home. The first time India won a Test match and a Test series away from home. They did both. This was the first time. New Zealand returned in 1969-70. So what happened then was something interesting. The series, it was a 3-test series, and it was tied 1-1. And so the third test was at Hyderabad. Now this was a very eventful test. Remember, this was the decider. The series was 1-1. So at Hyderabad, New Zealand made 181 for 9 on day 1, and then it rained for 2 days. And then the match resumed on an absolute green pitch. India were bowled out for 89. And New Zealand then declared, and India basically were doomed. On the last day, India had to bat all of the last day, which seemed impossible on a pitch that green. Or they had to score 268. Both seemed impossible. And India became 76 for 7. So then it started raining. And when the rain stopped, it didn't rain for long. It rained for about 15-20 minutes. But the ground staff showed no intent of removing the tarpaulin. They merely basically tried to use mops and rags to remove the water, which, so the crowd was not happy. They wanted the cricket to happen. So they actually booed the ground staff. They started chanting New Zealand Zindabad, down with the Indian team, shame, shame, Pataudi. Remember, Pataudi was a local at Hyderabad. Pataudi played for Hyderabad. But they booed. But the crowd understood what was going on. It was it was not clear whether it was incompetence or whether it was biased decision. It was a deliberate decision to slow things down. But things got so bad that New Zealand captain Graham Dowling actually took his shoes and socks off to start doing the mopping thing himself, and his teammates then joined in. So the entire New Zealand team started to clean up the ground as soon as possible, but the match never resumed. It was called off. It was a draw, and the media did not defend the Indian side. They had a go at the organizers. The organizers were severely criticized. So that was how the series ended. India returned in 1975-76. Now here at Auckland, Prasanna took 8 for 76 in the second innings. India won the test match. This still remains the best figures by any Indian bowler overseas. India won the test match, but the series was eventually drawn. 80-81 again. New Zealand won a series at home. This was New Zealand's first series win against India. 80-81 at home. New Zealand came to India. Hadley had toured India over a decade ago. He had promised never to return to India. He never liked the country. But at that point, Hadley needed just one wicket to become the leading wicket taker in history to break Ian Botham's record. So he arrived. And on the first morning of the series, he had Arun Lal caught at slip by Chris Kugeline. So that at that point became the world record. In Bangalore, in the same test match, what happened was half the New Zealand team went down with a stomach infection. So essentially, there was an SOS call sent out to any New Zealand citizen available to field as a substitute. So Jeremy Coney, who had come over as commentator, came out of the commentary box. Ken Nicholson, a New Zealand journalist, came out of the press box. They fielded as substitutes. 89-90, this was just ahead of the series. Shrikant had led India to a draw in Pakistan, but Shrikant was sacked. And just after the series, just before this New Zealand tour, just after the Pakistan series, before the New Zealand tour, Raj Singh Dungarpur had approached Mohammad Azharuddin and asked him, this is a very famous question, Miyaan Kaptan Banoge? Azhar had captained only 4 times in first class cricket until then. Azhar became India's new captain. This was his first tour. Azhar led India almost through the entirety of the 1990s.